Today's episode of How I Got the Shot is going to be quick yet thorough. The shots in question were created using a technique called shutter drag. I'll go into more detail later, but let's start by looking at the photos first. One of the key things to this technique, outside of having a model who poses fluidly, is to have wardrobe or accessories that have reflective properties. This is why I chose this handmade dress created by ETA Luxe. I'll put a link to her IG in the description. Without the reflection, the streaks you see across the image won't be as prominent. As far as gear, I was shooting with the Canon R5 with the 24-70 2.8 version 2. My key light was a Profoto D1 My fill light was a Godox something. If you guys care about that name, just put it in the comments below and I'll get that exact name. That light was gel with 2 sheets of blue, and the constant light was from the Zhiyun CF100s. The modifiers used were a Profoto beauty dish, 7-foot umbrella from Impact, a Godox snoot with a Profoto adapter, and the strip box you see on the side wasn't used for these images. I also was tethering into a 15-inch MacBook Air using the Tether Tools cable, the same orange one you see in all of my videos. For this concept to work, you need to have a few things coordinated. A strong colored constant light, and this can be done with gels, or in my case, I was using the Zhiyun CF100 light wand. You also need a strobe that can be focused onto the subject. This is where the snoot and the beauty dish comes in. On camera, you'll need to have your shutter speed extremely slow. The slower the shutter speed, the more dramatic the ghosting effect. For most people, 1/20th of a second is going to be a good starting point. Your aperture can be as high as you see fit, but an f8 is a good starting point as well. For those that don't know, your aperture controls your strobe in studio, and your strobe is what freezes your subject due to the flash duration. We can talk more about that in another video. Your shutter speed controls the ambient light, aka the constant lights. That's why you have to make sure the room is completely dark before you start this process. The last component is your camera movement. This can be done by zooming the lens in and out, quickly shifting the camera left to right, or having the model move in some type of way, or a combination of all three while you're pressing down the shutter. The latter is where I'm finding my own voice. I'm learning more and more of what I like with this technique. Because this was at a workshop, I switched between the snoot and the beauty dish just to show the attendees what the different modifiers would create. The snoot gave you a very localized amount of light. The beauty dish, without a grid, gave you a bigger spread. Now, I do prefer using a beauty dish with a grid, but I actually didn't have it this time. So we had what we had, and we got what we got. It was still beautiful, but I know, like, again, I will use a beauty dish with a grid next time. Now, let's talk about what we were running into while we were shooting this. So you'll be able to see more of this in the Capture One, but as you're watching the model, we wanted to make sure that we weren't losing who she was in the shots, in the sense of, I didn't want the ghosting effect to be so dramatic that you couldn't tell that it was a person there. I ran into that when I had my shutter speed too slow. So if you're seeing that you can barely see your subject, the first thing you want to check is to make sure your shutter speed isn't too slow to where you're losing it, and then you're not doing such a dramatic move that you're losing your subject. And then 2, making sure that your strobe is actually focused on your subject. A few times I had the strobe hitting her chest, or I had it hitting the top of her head, and some of that was just because how she was moving. So having the light localized on her face was the ideal place to have it. The other thing that you can run into, and that may cause a big issue, is just the size of the space. On this scenario, we shoot on the backdrop paper. If my movement is too large left or right or up or down, I'm gonna start seeing elements of the room that I don't want in my shot. In Photoshop, I had to actually remove those out of my shots because I just really didn't want it. When I've shot this on a cyc wall, it's a lot easier because it's just a bigger space. In an ideal world, you will want to shoot this on a cyc wall just because you have more space to play with. It's not that you can't do it in this scenario, but you just have to be mindful of your surroundings. All right, so let's move on to Capture One. So like I said, I always shoot tethered, so these images are coming in as we're shooting. And you can see just how dramatic this effect was. So when you zoom out while you're shooting the shot or zooming in, you're gonna make the ghost of her either really large or really small. And if you move it side to side, that's how you get that shift of her face, or her head, or her body actually, on one side or the other. You guys can see here how I'm just making adjustments. I'm playing around in Capture One to really see like how this final product is gonna look and seeing which images look the best. You can see here, sometimes it's really, really strong, and other times it's not. Depending on what colors you choose, you're able to actually add presets like the ones you see that I'm using to shift and push the colors to make it work. Just because you started out with one color doesn't mean you can't do something else. Also, this process that you see me going through, I do this for every single photo shoot. So before a client gets their proofs back, I actually go through and I test out different lighting scenarios. I push and pull colors. I adjust the exposure, contrast, I play with saturation. I really test the images to see if we fulfill what we created in the mood board. So anytime my client receives a gallery from me, they can be rest assured that I've went through every single image and I've pushed and pulled it to see what it can do. This is also why I always end up giving my clients 2 or 3 different color grades per image, because I've done this playing around. This is really fun for me. I've done this playing around and I've seen like just different options that they may like. I always give them a clean option that fits the mood board, but then I always like to just try something different that speaks to color theory and that also speaks to what I would put in my portfolio from a color grading standpoint. Let's move over to Photoshop. So luckily, when you do this technique, you don't have to do a ton of retouching. There isn't a lot of stuff you need to fix, but you can see here, there are small things I wanted to remove. So like I didn't really like the shadow behind her in that shot, so I just removed it completely, moved that little piece of blue so the transition is easy. And then the main thing was just cleaning up her eyes. She did an amazing job as far as applying makeup and keeping in line with what we discussed in the mood board. But I just wanted to clean up a couple of things just to even out the transitions and make it fit more into my style. So pretty much all my time was there. Everything else was left as it was because the effect itself is just that dope. And again, because I used Capture One to play around with the colors, I didn't need to do much of anything in here. I was already happy with it. But I wanted to at least clean up her eyes. So now in the second image, I actually left the shadow there because I felt like it made more sense, but it took some time to clean up that area. So you can see I'm removing that distraction from the background. And I kind of spoke on that earlier when I was saying, like, if you're shooting on the sidewall, you get more room to play with, but on a piece of paper, if you shift the camera too far left or right or up or down, you're gonna see elements of the studio or whatever space you're shooting in. But as you can see, I just primarily spent most of my time cleaning up the background. Yes, I could have used generative fill, but I am not a big fan of AI generated content. So I like to just do things myself, even if it takes me a couple of more minutes. I've been doing it for years and I'm very well used to it and I believe I can do it. And as you can see, I was able to do it. So once I cleaned up that side, it was just going in here, working on contouring just a little bit, cleaning up her eyes. But again, there wasn't no heavy editing necessary. One of the things that I preach when it comes to retouching is that it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be believable. So that's what you're seeing here. Like, I'm not making everything perfect, but when you're viewing this on IG, it'll look absolutely beautiful. Like, it won't seem like there's anything else that you could do to it. So final thoughts. I absolutely love the images. And I'm not just saying that because it's my work, but I'm actually just impressed with the fact that we were able to do it. We had the perfect dress, perfect model. All the lighting things worked out, even though I didn't bring a grid for the beauty dish. I'm still happy with what we were able to accomplish. The other thing was that I'm very happy that the people in tennis were able to actually pick up on the concept. I believe it all made sense to them. They didn't really have any questions afterwards because we literally went over every aspect of what it would take to accomplish these looks. And from a retouching standpoint, you can see there wasn't a whole lot of stuff we needed to do. The shot was the shot coming right out of camera, which is always great. And then we just needed to refine like the little things to make it perfect. If you guys are interested in more videos like this, make sure you subscribe, like this video for the algorithm, and to let me know that you guys actually like it. And then comment below if you have any questions or you have topics that you want me to discuss in future videos. I appreciate you guys and girls. Because when I say guys, I mean everybody, but just to be sure, I appreciate everybody for watching my videos. And I wanted to remind you guys, I know we're out here creating for other people, our friends, our family, and network, in and out of network, but make sure that you're creating for yourself. All right. Peace.